Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're diving into a really exciting topic that I think you're going to love. Make sure to stick around until the end so you don't miss anything important. All right, let's get started.
They tied her to the rails in the middle of a freight yard miles from help, chained her down, smeared her with grease, lit a flare, and waited for the train to do what bullets couldn't. They thought it would be over in seconds, that no one, not even a Navy SEAL, could outrun steel. But what happened next didn't just flip their plan. It turned the entire yard into a war zone. So before we show you what really happened on those tracks, hit subscribe with the bell icon turned on. And drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from, because this wasn't just a narrow escape. This was the moment they learned Navy SEALs are faster than trains. The sun hadn't broken the horizon yet when Lieutenant Commander Arden Holt felt the muzzle jammed into her ribs. She'd been walking a gravel road just outside El Paraje, logging town, southern Honduras, middle of nowhere. No convoy, no escort, just a borrowed rucksack and a sat phone in her front pocket. She was supposed to meet a UN liaison by 0700, hand off intel, catch the outbound transport by 8. Simple, except they knew her route, knew she'd be alone, and knew just enough to get cocky. The first blow came from behind, boot to the back of her knee, dropped her straight into the dirt. Second one was a rifle butt to the jaw. She didn't black out, not fully, but her vision narrowed to flickers. Boots, voices barking Spanish, zip ties burning her wrists as they wrenched her arms back. They moved military fast. Not trained soldiers. Cartel militia who'd watched enough war to fake the choreography. One leaned in close, bandana across his face, breath stinking of cigarettes. "Say nothing, move and we shoot your spine." Hood went over her head. She felt steel under her knees, smelled diesel and sweat, heard the slam of a tailgate and someone slapping the side of the truck twice. They were moving within seconds, fast, aggressive. Every bump pitched her sideways. Every turn felt like it carved through brush and dirt. She counted them anyway. 2 right, 1 left, hard break, then silence. Not the kind that comes from remoteness, the kind that lives inside abandoned places, where nature's taken over, but steel still remembers. They yanked her down, marched her over cracked concrete. Old freight depot, she guessed. The air smelled like rust and trapped heat. Gravel crunched under her boots. Then the creak of rail ties under pressure. When they ripped the hood off, she blinked hard against the pale dawn light. Tracks, real ones. Old, rusted, but still live. A freight line ran straight through the clearing. Broken down boxcars sat in the distance, doors eaten by salt and weather. Behind her, a rotting platform with a single bench, and graffiti curling across the wood. 7 men, all armed. One stood apart, black cargo pants, collared shirt rolled to the elbows, hair slicked back, no tattoos, no posturing, just control. And in his hand, a stopwatch. "You're early," he said in perfect English. Arden didn't answer. He knelt, looked her in the eye. "I was told you're good with timetables. That true?" She stared at him, blood drying at the corner of her mouth. He smiled, nodded to his men. "Tie her down." 2 grabbed her. 1 wrapped a steel chain around her ankles, pinning them to the center rail. Another forced her wrists above her head and looped cable between the rail spikes. The man with the stopwatch clicked it once. "Northbound freight, 8 minutes. Let's see how fast a Navy SEAL can beg." Then he stepped back and waited. The steel was hot against her spine. It didn't make sense at first. Why go through the trouble? Why not just shoot her in a ditch and dump the body like they'd done to dozens before? But this wasn't about death. It was about message, symbolism, humiliation. They'd taken her boots, her belt, cut the sleeves off her uniform and smeared her with grease and dirt like some discarded piece of equipment. Her wrists were lashed tight above her head, cable looped through the spikes, ankles chained at the base, spread just wide enough to kill any leverage, sharp gravel pressed into her back. She could feel the tremor of the rail long before the sound came. She wasn't alone. A half-dozen men stood watching from the shade of a corroded freight car, chewing sunflower seeds, laughing like kids at a bonfire. One aimed his phone at her, already recording. Another held a long red flare and lit it with a theatrical flourish. It hissed and popped, casting hellish light across the track. "You know," one said in Spanish, "the last guy we tied down only screamed when he saw the lights. Not before. She'll scream before." "She's tougher," another replied. "I bet she spits in his face before it comes." They were betting on her death like it was a dogfight. Arden's breathing slowed. Not out of fear, not yet, but because she had no margin for error. The vibration was growing stronger now, rhythmic pulses like a second heartbeat. Through the metal beneath her, freight, probably 6 cars, empty on the return loop. It wouldn't even slow down at this junction. No switches, no yards, just a straight shot through the clearing. The man with the stopwatch checked it again. 3 minutes. He crouched beside her, leaned close. "It's not personal, Commander. You're just leverage. The gringos stopped sniffing around the shipments. We stopped tying them to tracks. Simple." She didn't speak, didn't blink. He smirked. "Still quiet. You SEALs really die with your mouths shut, huh?" He stood, tossed the flare beside her so the train would see the body but not have time to stop. The others backed up. One held a radio scanning static. Another climbed onto a rusted bulldozer, camera still rolling. Another climbed onto a rusted bulldozer, camera still rolling. Arden inhaled through her nose. The chains weren't loose, but the cable at her wrists had play, maybe half an inch. Enough for circulation, not enough to slip free. She focused, track shutter increasing. Horn? Not yet, probably under a mile. Visual in less than a minute. She shifted her hips, not to escape, to test flexibility. Ligaments stretched, shoulder alignment twisted. The pain was sharp, immediate, familiar. She gritted her teeth, no panic in her blood. Only math, distance, speed, mass, and time, because trains didn't stop, but neither did SEALs. The first blast of the horn shattered the silence. It echoed off the empty freight cars, tore through the clearing, sent a few of the men flinching despite themselves. Not Arden. She didn't move. She was counting not seconds, but intervals. The length between the first horn and the next, the change in rail vibration, the Doppler shift in sound. Every clue told her what she needed. Train closing fast, northbound, running light, maybe 40 miles per hour. Still over 100,000 pounds of steel coming directly at her. No time to wait, no chance to hesitate. She looked down her body, testing every joint in sequence. Wrists, bound high, but the bolt beneath them was rusted. One good twist might give her slack. Ankles, too tight to slip, but the chain wasn't padlocked, just looped and tensioned, possibly slidable. Hips, her left side had more range. The shoulder above it had popped out once in training. If she forced it again, she could gain room, enough for rotation. Maybe. She exhaled slowly. Controlled hiss between her teeth. Another horn, closer now, seconds out. The flare beside her hissed louder, red smoke curling upward. The man with the stopwatch raised a hand. 30 seconds! His men were giddy, filming, laughing. One mimicked a scream and fell backward off a barrel. She wasn't going to give them that. Instead, she dislocated her left thumb. It wasn't graceful. It took grinding her knuckle against the gravel until the joint shifted with a sickening pop. Pain flashed white hot through her arm. She didn't stop, angled her wrist and twisted, forcing the bone under the edge of the bolt, pulling against the fibers of her own skin. The cable bit deep. Blood welled fast, but her hand moved. Millimeter by millimeter, she turned it sideways and slid it, slick with sweat and blood, out from the loop. The men didn't notice. They were all facing the train now, hands shading eyes. Camera zoomed in. One raised a bottle to toast the oncoming impact. Arden flexed her shoulder, took a breath, and moved. She twisted her body hard, throwing her freed arm down to her side. Her other hand screamed with torn muscle. Her chained ankles gave only an inch, but it was enough. She arched, rolled her torso sideways, dug her shoulder into the gravel, and wrenched her hip. The horn blasted again. Train headlights erupted from the trees. Full beam, no brakes. Arden Holt flipped herself sideways off the rails. The chain held her feet, but only on one rail now. Her upper body landed hard on the gravel, ribs slamming stone. Sparks flashed inches from her face as the locomotive screamed past. So close she felt the air tear at her skin. Metal, wind, heat, but not hers. She was alive. They didn't know that yet, and that mistake was going to cost them everything. The wind in the wake of the train was a wall, hot, greasy, stinking of steel and oil. It ripped over her like a freight-sized exhale, dragging gravel and dust and fragments of her sleeve with it. Arden stayed flat, face buried in the dirt, arms curled tight to shield her skull from debris. The noise was unreal, wheels screaming over tracks, metal thundering against metal, like a war drum with no rhythm. 6 freight cars, 7, 8. She counted them by vibration, not by sight. Didn't dare raise her head, not yet. Then, finally, quiet. It didn't ease in. It just stopped. The train was gone. In its place, stunned silence. She opened her eyes to a cloud of kicked-up dust and pale sunlight cutting through it. Her chest ached from the impact. Ribs felt cracked, shirt soaked with sweat and blood, but she was off the track, and she was breathing. The men hadn't moved yet, still frozen, slack-jawed. From their angle, it looked like the train went right through her. Then came the shouting. "She's gone! No, look! There!" One of them saw her, arm still chained to the far rail, torso in the gravel, one knee already curling under her body. Arden didn't wait for the second look. She rolled hard toward the shadows between 2 abandoned boxcars. The chain on her ankles clinked as she moved, still tight, but dragging with her. Slowed her, didn't stop her. Disparanla! Shoot her! Gunshots rang out, rushed, wild. Chunks of rail and rock exploded near her hip. One slug sparked off a rusted coupler inches from her shoulder. She dove straight into the dark mouth of a splintered maintenance tunnel beneath the platform. Her shoulder hit cement. Forearm scraped open on a nail. She didn't stop moving. Inside, she found what she needed. A rusted steel hook once used to hoist brake lines, still bolted into concrete. She looped the chain through it, braced her boot against the wall, and yanked. Once, twice. On the third pull, the chain snapped free from the coupling with a shriek of metal, not off her ankle. But now it was loose, dead weight she could carry. More footsteps. Above, they were spreading out. She couldn't have gotten far. She's wounded. She's not human. She took a breath, steadied herself against the cold wall of the tunnel, looked down at her hand. Torn skin, dirt-packed cuts, thumb still out of socket. She popped it back with a growl in her throat, ripped her remaining sleeve, and wrapped the worst of the bleeding. Then she moved, low, fast, through the belly of the yard, a shadow now, armed with nothing but blood, pain, and timing. That was enough, because she wasn't the one who'd made a mistake. They left a Navy SEAL alive. The freight yard was quiet again, but not still. It had that uneasy tension, like a place that knew. It had woken something it couldn't put back to sleep. The militia fanned out with flashlights and rifles, calling out to each other in clipped bursts of Spanish. They moved like men hunting a wounded animal, arrogant, noisy, certain she couldn't have gotten far, certain she was bleeding too badly to fight. Arden stayed 3 steps ahead. She moved low through a maze of rusting shipping containers, the broken chain dragging silently behind her, hugged walls, crouched behind barrels, slipped under the shells of old rail cars. Right knee throbbed, ankle starting to swell. But her hearing was sharp, eyes sharper. She passed a fire barrel still warm with embers. A tarp hung over crates that reeked of diesel and sweat. Beyond it, 2 men stood smoking near an old control shed, talking low. Arden crouched, stilled her breath. "They're gonna ask questions," one said. The other shrugged. "We tell them she died. Show the video. What else?" "She didn't scream. I didn't hear screaming." A pause. "You think she jumped?" "She's dead. Nobody moves like that." El Rey's not gonna like it if she's not. Then we don't tell him till we find the body. Another puff of smoke. They turned, walked deeper into the yard. Arden waited until their voices faded, then moved to the crates they'd been guarding, lifted the tarp edge. Shipping manifests clipped to the wood. She scanned them fast. Destination codes, consulate stamps, fake supplier names. But one line caught her eye. A handwritten note in the margin. Confirm Lima drop before 0600 or abort secondary. Lima. That wasn't Honduras. That was Peru. This wasn't just a local route. It was international. Multi-country. Which meant coordination. Which meant someone higher up the chain was running oversight. She pulled the manifest free, folded it, tucked it into her waistband under her torn shirt. She slipped inside the shed behind them. The door creaked. She was already past it before it opened more than a sliver. Inside, workbench, rusted tools, and a man, young, bored, distracted, sitting on a milk crate by the radio. Arden moved like water. Her arm looped around his throat from behind. He tried to cry out. She clamped tighter. His knees thrashed once, twice, stopped. She eased him to the floor, took the rag from his back pocket, gagged him, tied his wrist behind his back with stripped wire. He blinked up at her, eyes wide. "Don't talk," she whispered. He didn't. She knelt, grabbed the radio, flicked through channels until she found the encrypted band. Military issue, U.S. serial tag etched into the side. One of ours. Confiscated, intercepted. She flipped it off. Checked the crates nearby. Stenciled with humanitarian markings. Medical aid. Panama. But the weight was wrong. She cracked one open with a crowbar from the bench. Inside, rifles, NATO calibers, clean, greased, numbered. Some still had armory tags half scraped off. Her pulse slowed. This wasn't just local intimidation. This was a corridor, a moving weapons route disguised under foreign aid. She looked at the man on the floor, too scared to lie well. Pulled a knife from the belt of the guard she'd strangled, pressed it gently against his chin. "Where's the next shipment headed?" He swallowed. "Train," he croaked. "Tonight, 2 hours, East Tunnel." That was all she needed. She left him tied and unconscious behind a drum of coolant. The freight yard thought it was hunting a wounded woman, didn't know it was being stalked by a SEAL. And now the yard itself would bleed. By the time they realized she was still alive, Arden had already taken the freight yard apart one corner at a time. She didn't need a gun. Not yet. What she needed was fear. She started with the oil. Near the main junction, where they'd parked a salvage switch engine, she found an overturned drum leaking slick black residue into the dirt, took a length of hose, siphoned enough into a dented coffee tin, poured it across the gravel path used by the North Perimeter Patrol, then awaited in the shadow of a storage tank. First man came jogging through, rifle across his chest. She let him pass. His boots skidded. He shouted, landed hard. Impact knocked the wind from him. By the time he tried to rise, Arden was already on him. She didn't kill him, just broke his nose with the heel of her palm, wrapped his belt around his wrists, gagged him with his own undershirt, dragged him behind a stack of crates, and left his flashlight glowing just enough to cast strange shadows on the wall. Let the others find it. Let them wonder. Then she moved south. There was a narrow passage between two stacked shipping containers where guards had placed motion sensors. She didn't trip them. She disabled them, cut the signal wire, and angled the receiver toward the ground. Next man who passed through never saw the steel pipe she had propped at shoulder height. Hit it running, dropped like a marionette with cut strings. 2 down, 4 to go, plus the ones cowering in the control shack. She doubled back, planted the hook she'd ripped from the maintenance tunnel, fixed it to the back of a counterweight chain on an unused crane, then climbed. Quiet, fast. Rain began to fall. Light at first, just mist kissing rust. Masked her movement, turned footsteps into suggestion. From her perch, she watched the group panic. One man shouted to turn on all the floodlights. Another barked to stay together, claimed she must be injured. "She's bluffing," he said. "She's a ghost, bleeding out." But ghosts didn't bleed, and SEALs didn't bluff. She dropped the chain from above, not onto a man, but onto a metal bin near the fire barrel. Sound was thunderous, echoed like an explosion. 2 men opened fire immediately, one emptying an entire magazine into the darkness. Their panic was a weapon now. Arden slipped down from the crane and retrieved the pistol from the body of the man she'd left by the oil slick. Didn't fire it. just made sure the safety was off. Her hand was steady now. Adrenaline had equalized the pain in her joints. Swelling in her ankle plateaued. Blood on her sleeve drying. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, just whispered under her breath, "You thought I'd scream." She moved back toward the main control booth, where the man with the stopwatch had vanished hours ago. Time to find out what else he was hiding. Time to make him watch the whole yard fall apart. The control booth sat high above the yard on an iron platform with peeling yellow rails and a long, narrow stairwell. From below, Arden could see a light still glowing inside, faint, yellowed, steady. Someone was still up there, watching, waiting. She climbed slow, one step at a time, not silent, not fast, purposefully. Let them hear her coming. Inside, the man with the stopwatch stood alone, leaning over a table cluttered with radios, maps, and a half-drunk thermos. Sleeves rolled, hair no longer slick, collar loosened, sweat darkened his chest. He turned as she reached the top step, froze. "You," he muttered. Arden didn't raise the pistol yet, just stepped inside and kicked the door shut behind her. "You're supposed to be dead," he said, voice low. "I watched you get hit." "No," she said flatly. "You watched a flare and a train. You didn't watch me." His hand twitched toward his sidearm. She lifted the pistol halfway, tilted her head. "Don't." He froze again. For a long moment, neither moved, just the sound of the storm outside thickening, wind howling against steel, distant voices shouting orders with no direction. "You're limping," he observed. "You're shaking," she answered. He stepped back, trying to find control in his voice. "You don't understand what you've walked into." "I didn't walk. You dragged me here," she said. "And I understand more than you think. Those crates, marked for medical aid, filled with American rifles. That radio you're holding, encrypted, U.S. standard. Someone high up signed off on this. You're not just a thug. You're a middleman. You think this is new?" he snapped, the calm mask cracking. "You think you found some scandal?" "This isn't a secret. This is how things move when official channels don't work." "That why you chained me to the tracks?" Arden said, stepped closer. "Because your supply chain needed a public execution?" His eyes narrowed. "Because you saw something you shouldn't have. And because fear travels faster than reports." "Who's receiving in Lima?" she asked. He blinked, surprised she knew. "You don't—" "I read the manifest," she cut in. "Secondary drop, 0600 deadline, which means someone's waiting. Someone with access to a port. So who is it?" His jaw tightened. Sweat beaded at his temple. "You're in over your head." "Names," she said, stepped closer, let the barrel of the pistol rest against his collarbone. "Or I walk you outside and let your men think you gave me everything already." His breathing quickened. She could see the calculation in his eyes, weighing loyalty against survival, weighing silence against the sound of his own people turning on him. "Vargas," he finally said, voice barely above a whisper. "Dockmaster, Peruvian Customs. He signs off on the containers as agricultural equipment." "And who pays him?" "I don't know names, just accounts. Offshore, routed through 3 countries before it touches him." "How long has this been running?" 2 years, maybe more. I came in 6 months ago." She stared at him. "You made one mistake." "Oh?" he sneered. "And what's that?" "You forgot who you tied down." She moved. In one motion, pistol whipped his hand. Radio clattered loose. He lunged, tried to tackle her. She stepped sideways, wrapped her arm around his throat, drove him into the table. Equipment clattered, chair toppled. He thrashed, fast, desperate, but she knew the rhythm of a losing man. He reached for a flare gun. She kicked it across the room, then slammed him down, hard, once, twice, until his body sagged against the table and his fight was gone. She zip-tied his wrists behind his back, same cable he'd once used on her, grabbed the map off the desk, hand-drawn freight routes, supply codes, foreign consulate notations. Enough. She turned the radio on. "Command, this is Holt. High-value target in custody. Freight yard compromised. Sending coordinates now." Then she knelt beside him, said quietly, "Now you get to wait for the train." Rain sheeted down the glass as Arden descended the stairs. Control booth behind her flickered once, then went dark. She'd cut the power before leaving. Plunged the upper yard into shadow while floodlights still buzzed near the platform edge. Enough contrast to confuse the remaining guards. They were shouting now, moving erratically, firing wild into shadows that didn't shoot back. She didn't care. Because the next train was coming. And this one, she planned to ride. The tied-up lieutenant had been halfway through a manifest when she'd spotted timing notes in the margin. Shipment due in 15 minutes, eastbound. Disguised as a passenger maintenance run. 3 crates marked as railway equipment on the outer manifest. Real cargo, high-caliber rifles, comms relays, palletized explosives, headed to a port on the Caribbean coast. She moved fast. In the lower yard, she crossed to the switching junction and flipped the lead rail. Motion squealed, old metal resisting, but it locked. Train would now divert onto the unused sidetrack, the one they thought hadn't functioned in years. Reloaded the pistol she'd recovered from the first downed guard. 2 rounds left. No time to search for more. Flicker of light appeared through the rain-soaked trees. Headlights. Train was coming. Shout rang out behind her. There she is! 3 remaining militia charged from the western platform. Rifles raised. Arden dove behind a row of crates as bullets split the air, tearing through sheet metal, shattering a halogen fixture. Light exploded, arcs of sparks across the gravel. She waited for a pause, then stood. 2 quick shots. First hit the lead shooter in the thigh, spun him to the ground. Second missed. Wide. She ducked again, rolling behind an overturned forklift. Others kept firing, rhythm sloppy now, desperate. Behind them, train horn blared once, long and deep, just seconds away. Arden bolted, sprinted across the gravel, chain still dragging from her ankle, soaked to the bone, every muscle screaming, but she was faster, reached the lead car just as it screeched past the junction, leapt, caught the side ladder with one hand, slipped, regripped, pulled herself up. Bullets pinged off the frame behind her. Too late. Train shifted onto the sidetrack, the one she'd chosen. In seconds, barreling past the heart of the yard, rolling directly into the loading zone where 3 freight containers sat, still sealed, still tagged. 2 black SUVs screeched into the yard from the north. U.S. Rapid Response Team. Backup. They'd been listening. Floodlights snapped on. Shouts rose in both Spanish and English. Down! Armas abajo! Militia dropped weapons. Some ran. Most froze. One man tried to flee along the tracks. Arden stepped off the side of the still slowing train, leveled her pistol. Don't, she said. He stopped. Crates secured. Yard surrounded. And the train they'd meant to use for trafficking now carried evidence. Because this time, it didn't deliver death. It delivered a seal. The rain had slowed to mist by the time the last crate was tagged and loaded into the transport truck. Floodlights flooded the yard, white and unforgiving, turning every puddle into a mirror, every shadow into a silhouette. U.S. personnel moved with precision, quiet, armored, professional, barely glanced at Arden as they swept past, clearing the remaining sheds, zip-tying the last dazed militia fighters to steel railings. She liked it that way. Recognition wasn't her currency, results were. She stood near the base of the train platform, drenched, bruised, hands resting on her hips. Broken chain still clinked against her boot with every step. She hadn't cut it off yet. Maybe she wouldn't. Voice called out behind her. Lieutenant Commander Holt? She turned. SEAL team leader approached. Clean fatigues, no helmet, scar across his right temple. Boots squelched in the mud as he stopped a few feet away. You the one who called it in? He asked, looking around at the yard, then back at her. She nodded once. He let out a low whistle. You did this alone? Arden's voice was dry. They had numbers. I had time. He smirked. We thought you were KIA. She didn't answer right away, just looked at the tracks stretching out behind them, soaked in rain, flecked with oil and blood. I was close, she said. They chained me to the rails. He blinked. You got off the rails? I moved, she said. They didn't expect that. The smirk faded. Quiet respect replaced it. Medical's inbound. he said. "You're banged up." "I'm fine," Arden replied, rolling her shoulder once, testing the swelling in her ribs. "Secure the evidence. Paperwork's in the booth. Lieutenant's in custody. You'll want his comms logs, too." He nodded. Understood. Rotor beat began to grow in the distance. Heavy, deep, unmistakable. Blackhawk. Inbound for lift. Ground trembled faintly. As the helicopter descended, gusting mist and debris across the yard, the SEAL leader offered her a harness. She took it. He clipped her in, stepped back. "After you," he said. She grabbed the cable, rose as the winch pulled her skyward, boots still muddy, uniform soaked, eyes locked on the glowing yard beneath her. Below, the train sat quiet now, not moving, not threatening, just steel and memory. And for once, it didn't win. Could you survive being chained to an active railway track with a train just seconds away? And do you think Arden Holt made it out because of training or something deeper? Let us know what you would have done in her place. We read every single comment. If this story kept your heart racing, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe with the bell icon turned on so you never miss a mission. And share this video with someone who still thinks Navy SEALs only fight on open ground. There's another story already waiting for you. Just tap the screen to watch it next. And I'll see you tomorrow, same time, with a brand new mission.